The first weekend that I moved to Dallas, some friends took me to a show, and it was literally like a movie. It was like the light shining on it was just like, oh, this is what you should do. It was amazing. It was as close to a spiritual moment as I've ever had. I was an audience volunteer, and then they had workshops, and I took a couple workshops, and it just was something that I absolutely loved. I just loved everything about improv. The teamwork aspect of it, you don't know what's going to happen next, finding that one perfect moment, that everybody working together for this common experience of finding this perfect comedy moment. I loved everything about it.
In a corporate world where all employees have great leaders with no egos that create fun cultures where people can do their best work, the employees and companies thrive while doing great things for the customers, themselves, and each other.
Well, we know that rarely happens. I'm Jeff Palacio. I have been a leader for over 40 years for every t-shirt size company, from small 16 employees to extra large over 1 million. Please join me while I interview outstanding leaders that will share stories of great leadership and not so great. It will help you become a better leader while poking fun about all the crazy shit that happens in corporate America.
Hi, I'm Joe Deshawn, and welcome to the Corporate Couch with Jeff Palacio. Today's episode is brought to you by Exec HQ, a C-suite fractional firm providing elite executives for your business. Today, Jeff is interviewing Joel Zeff. Joel is a keynote speaker who has spoken at more than 2,500 events in the last 25 years. He shares his experience and insight on collaboration, leadership, change, communication, innovation, fun, and passion. His book, Make the Right Choice, Lead with Passion, Elevate Your Team, and Unleash the Fun at Work, is consistently listed as one of the top work-life balance books on Amazon. He has appeared on CNBC and has been featured in the Dallas Morning News, the Houston Chronicle, the Kansas City Star, and many other media outlets. You can learn more about Joel at joelzeff.com. Let's listen as Jeff talks to Joel.
Joel, welcome to the Corporate Couch today.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate you having me.
Oh, man. So very, very excited to talk to you. You were introduced to me by Mark Mears, who has also appeared on the podcast. And we had coffee recently in Kansas City. So you live in Dallas, but I won't hold that against you.
But originally from Kansas City.
Yes.
I'm originally from Kansas City.
Originally from Kansas City, and in the Oak Hill High School Hall of Fame.
Oak
right?
Park.
Oak Park. Oak
Same.
Park. Well, I thought it was Oak Hill because I'm like, it can't be the same thing as the Oak Park Mall. So I went to Oak Hill, but yes, Oak Park.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Oak Park High School Hall of Fame. That's right.
Yeah. And Joel, did you know, so, in preparation to talk to you today, I went to your LinkedIn. Do you know there's a rabbi/therapist in Israel with your name?
I do.
Yeah.
And actually, I think he lives in the U.S. Some of the time, because one time he called me and said, funny
Stop
story.
Using my name.
Yeah, he did. He called me out of the blue. We've never met, but he did call me. And he said, I was at a conference and people kept coming up and wanting me to sign my book. And I said, well, okay, great. I'm not sure why you're telling me this. And he said, it was your book. The conference bought your book for the audience.
Oh, wow.
And everybody came up. And
Nice.
I'm like, that's fantastic, Rabbi. Keep signing my book.
And they go, oh, you're a rabbi also.
And yeah. So I don't know how many books the conference bought that he signed, but enough that he called me.
Yeah.
So I was pretty excited.
Yeah.
That was my one interaction.
Yeah. So I usually start with a fun question. It's usually the same, but based on your background, I'm never asked a guest this question before. So, yeah, are you ready for it?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. What is the best junior high or high school prank you ever pulled?
Man, that's a good question because I haven't really thought about that. I have a good one when I left PR agency. I have a good one that when I left, I was working at a PR agency and I was recruited to an advertising agency. Can I give you that one? That was a pretty
Sure.
good one.
Sure. Give me that one.
So right before, that's the one that comes to mind. Maybe if a high school one comes to mind, I'll tell you. But right before I got recruited out of this PR agency, I got new business cards. I might have gotten a promotion. I don't remember, but I got new business cards, like 1,000, a huge box, like 1,000, 1,500 cards. And then I get a new job at an ad agency. And so I had all these business cards. So the day before I left, I hid 1,500 business cards throughout the office, everywhere. Some were really easy, like in the coffee grounds. I'd put my business card in the coffee grounds.
In the coffee grounds?
Yeah, like in the
Nice.
can. I would
Nice.
put I mean, I'm talking, 1,000, 1,500 cards. That's a lot of
Yeah.
business cards. I was putting them in people's files.
Yeah.
I mean, everywhere in the office.
Yeah.
You name it. Some were easy, some were and I would get calls months, if not several years later. Hey, I found your card in
So
such
good.
and such. Yeah.
So good.
And so they were at first, because there was a bunch they found right at the beginning,
Yeah.
because they were everywhere, put them on the refrigerator. I put them,
Yeah.
just easy places. And so people would call me and like, why are your business cards everywhere? And then, so yeah, I hid it was it was at least 1,000, maybe 2,000 business cards that I hid throughout the
So
public
good.
relations office.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you grew up in North Kansas City?
No, I grew up in Overland Park, Kansas till 3rd grade. Then we moved away a little bit, came back 4th grade. And then in 5th grade, we moved north of the river in Gladstone.
Okay. What was fun for you growing up, Joel? What did you love doing?
I was trying to find an outlet for my energy and humor. And so in high school, I started doing theater. And so I started finding my outlet. And I actually, in 8th grade, I don't know if it's a prank, but in 8th grade, I did a stand-up for a talent show. That was my first stand-up. I did a stand-up routine in 8th grade for the whole 8th grade. I was just like doing impressions of like teachers, the principal. I think I had some props. I don't remember. I remember the class ended, the day ended, and I was still in the middle of I don't know how much time I was doing, but I was still in the middle. And so we came back the next day and I continued my material. So I must have done a long set.
So you had no fear of speaking in public, obviously.
No.
Yeah.
And here's and you think that was, so my senior year in high school, the principal had this idea that he was going to showcase like 4 different people doing talent for the whole school, 2,000 students, 2,000 in an all school assembly, 2,000 students. And he said, would you be interested? And he asked me first, would you be interested in doing a stand-up in front of 2,000 kids, my senior year in high school? Wow. So I said, I said yes, which like one guy was playing the violin. One guy, I don't know, I think there was a trumpet or something. And then one guy did this kind of lip sync weird thing, which he's a friend of mine. I still make fun of him for. And I did stand up in front of the whole high school. And so you remember high school, there's a lot of different types of people.
Yeah.
And not everybody thinks you're funny. And so somehow though, I was able to connect with the whole audience, with everybody. Obviously, my whole bit was just doing impressions and making fun of the school and making fun of the principals. How I didn't get suspended, I don't know. But they loved it. And so that was always my first couple times doing stand-up. And then when the newspaper, I was working in Dallas and I was working at the Dallas Times-Herald and the paper closed. And so I obviously had a lot of free time, and we can talk about that story too. And I had a lot of free time and I started really doing stand-up, like at open mics, and really, this was real stand-up at a real club. And I loved it. And then I auditioned for an improv group. And so I had stand-up and had improv, and I was able, the group asked me to join, and I found that I loved improv more than I loved stand-up. I was doing both. And so improv, it was just something that, it was just a passion. It was just something I was drawn to. And it was like I had found my calling. And that translated several years later to one of my PR clients saying, hey, we know you do improv on the weekends. Can you do some of those games with us before dinner? We're having this executive retreat. And that's how my speaking career started.
Wow.
So it went from stand up to improv to the corporate world.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, we're going to talk a lot about that. But go back in terms of school, though. I could see it going a couple different ways. I mean, obviously you're a high energy a kid, right? And how was your grades in school? Because that could either go really good or really bad.
I had really good grades
Yeah.
until there were some math. I can't do math, Jeff.
Yeah.
And
It's all right.
I'm only going to put so much effort into it. I'm like, what do I need to do to get a C so I don't look like an idiot?
Right.
And that's what I did. And I'm like, I'm not going to need this.
Right.
There's no
Especially
point in my
geometry.
future. There's no point in my future where I'm going to like, man, I really need this algebra 2. This is really going to help me move forward. I knew at an early age, this was not going to work for me. But yeah, no, I'm very responsible. I believed in putting that effort, very responsible, very accountable. I was going to get good grades. And then there were a couple math classes that I was like, this is just not going to work for me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Spanish, that was
Yeah.
hard too.
Yeah.
Everything else, I was able to get an A. But yeah, Spanish,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I learned that growing up myself. Like, I was expected to get all A's, but I mean, for my kids, I'm like, you can't be good at everything. So it's like, just do
No.
the best you can, learn
No.
the basics, but you're not, it's like life.
Yeah. There's nothing in my brain that can do math.
Yeah.
There's nothing. I mean, I can do a calculator,
Yeah.
I can add up,
Yeah.
I can do simple addition,
Yeah.
subtraction, and
Yeah.
balance my checkbook and everything.
Yeah.
But no, fractions, algebra, geometry.
Yeah.
It's not in there.
Your movie's not a beautiful mind. It's a beautiful comedic mind for you.
It is not. It is not. And I remember I had a teacher in high school, and she was like, you need to take chemistry. You need to take chemistry. And I said, no, I don't. I don't need chemistry. And she says, you should. And I'm like, no. And then she wrote out a note, you will regret not taking chemistry.
Yeah.
And I've never regretted it.
Yeah. And
I just knew.
And you're in the Oak Park Hall of Fame. There you go.
You don't need it. Why are we doing this?
God, I wish I skipped chemistry. Did you have comedy heroes growing up? Like, who were kind of your influences?
Actually, I remember probably my first comedy album my mom had, and it was Steve Martin, Wild and Crazy Guy. Actually, there were two of them: Steve Martin, Wild and Crazy Guy, and Steve Martin's Let's Get Small. And so I would play those albums. I know I'm dating myself. And for those at home that don't know what an album is, there was a record player and this piece of plastic, and you put it on a record, and the needle would play music. And so Steve Martin for sure. But I would watch all the anytime comedy would come on, or if I could stay up late. But I was certainly drawn toward all the old school Don Rickles and Jonathan Winters, and all those, Bob Newhart, Rich Little, all those when I was growing up, the people that were on there, and then in the 80s, you had that huge stand-up explosion. And we would go. I remember people snuck into bars. I'm sneaking into the comedy club to go see stand-up comedians. You remember in Kansas City, Stanford and Sons?
Yep,
you remember?
Sure.
Down in Westport.
Yeah.
And so we would go like on the weekends, and I'm underage.
Yep.
And somehow get in to watch. I don't even know if they were any good, but they were different. You'd have the local people or whatever. And so that was just something that I was absolutely drawn to.
Yeah. So was that your goal? Kind of like, I'm going to be a stand-up comedian when you were a kid? What was your did you have an aspiration?
Yeah. I had a split personality. So the other one half was very career oriented. I'm going to have a responsible career. And then the other half was the comedy half. And I didn't know how to access that other than just being, in a normal situation. So I got a journalism degree at the University of Kansas. I was a newspaper reporter, and I'm writing about murder and fires and death. I'm not even writing about fun stuff. I'm writing about terrible things, but I enjoyed it, and I liked telling people stories, and I liked meeting people. But that was the responsible side, and then that comedy side was kind of dormant for a little while. So I was working at the paper, and when the paper closed, that side of me that's what I accessed, and I started doing stand up because obviously I had free time, a severance check, and not a job. And so that's when I started doing comedy, and I loved it. And I really, when I started doing improv, that's when it really hit of this is what I want to do. And then I just had to figure out how that was going to work.
Yeah. Yeah. So you went right to the newspaper industry. It looked like after college, you were in Saginaw News up in Michigan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Saganasty in Saginaw, Michigan. That was our nickname, Saganasty. That was, I mean, it wasn't, I didn't make that up. Somebody else said it.
That was a long tenure there. It looked like it was 10 months on your LinkedIn.
Yes. It was winter the entire time.
It's still winter there.
Yeah. Winter was coming, and it was still winter. My goal was to be there for less than a year, and that worked out. The Dallas Times-Herald recruited me out of Saginaw to come to Dallas and be a reporter in Dallas. And so I loved that job in Saginaw. I really did. I still have friends that I keep in touch with. I started there in 1990 and left there in 91. And so Dallas Times-Herald called. I went down to Dallas, and then 6 months after I joined the newspaper, the morning news bought out the Herald. So I was out of a job. So I jumped on board the Titanic, Jeff, right as it was leaving the dock, and it was toot toot. I was like, wait, let me jump on board. And so instead of it being like a week, it was 6 months later, it hit the iceberg. And they called me on a Sunday, and they said, come clean out your desk. The paper's closing.
You shared a funny story with me on the last day of that Dallas Times-Herald. Would you like to share that with the audience?
Yeah, actually, I don't. I didn't put my magic harmonica. It's not on my desk. All right, so I'm gonna have to tell the story without the magic harmonica. So they called me on Sunday, and they said, come clean out your desk. And it was not a terrible thing because it was a tough job. I was not happy. And so it was a weight kind of had lifted from my shoulders when I took that phone call. And so as I was walking out my 1-bedroom apartment, it's a big part. Imagine a 1-bedroom apartment with no furniture. I had a couch and a bed. That was it. I grabbed a harmonica that I bought in college at, I guess, a lecture. I don't remember that. But anyway, I had this harmonica. And so I didn't every time I walk out the door, grab the harmonica. But for some reason this day I did. And so I took the harmonica and I walked out the door, and I don't know what I was going to do with it. And so I went down to the newspaper, and, everybody's got a range of emotions. They're angry, they're confused, they're sad. I mean, some of these people have been working there for decades. I joined 6 months ago. I'm a young, stupid kid. You kind of survey the situation, and it's literally like a free for all. Everyone's just taking stuff off the wall, just grabbing everything that they can grab. I took a 3-hole punch and a stapler, which I still have. And that was my treasure that I took from the Times-Herald, was a 3-hole punch.
No pen.
And I might have grabbed a pen. I don't remember, but I remember the 3-hole punch and the stapler. I'm like, no one's going to need this. I'm gonna and people are walking out with carts full of books that they're going to sell at half price books, or they're grabbing Pulitzer Prize winning photographs off the wall. And I'm like, I'm just going to take the 3-hole punch. People are taking what was called trash. They were called trash 180s or trash 80s. Radio
Shack TRS. 80s.
We called them, trash 80s. They were taking, God only knows where those are now. And so at a museum. So they're taking they're just taking everything. And I'll just take this 3-hole punch. And so I was looking around, and in the back loading dock, the media had gathered, the TV stations, the other newspapers, radio stations. And they're covering the closure of the newspaper, which is a big deal in 1991. If a daily metropolitan newspaper closes, it's a big deal. And so I kind of surveyed the scene. I took out my harmonica, and I kind of did a bow, 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 bow. I lost my job. Ba-bow, bow. I got no money. Ba-bow, bow. They told me to clean out my desk. Ba-bow, bow. I just moved here 6 months ago. Ba-bow, bow. I got the newspaper blues. And so I did that.
Kind of like a George Thorogood song without the
it was
guitar.
except for it was with no real tone or musical ability,
and people were probably pissed at you
or rhyming. It was I have no musical ability. But here's what happened: the cameras literally went like this. I mean, they could not, a young kid playing the harmonica on the back loading dock as he just lost his job is not a normal occurrence. And so what does the media cover? Things that aren't normal, things that they want what's not the rote reaction. They want something different. And so that's what I was doing. And so that's why the cameras just zoomed in. And then someone, I don't remember what they look like, but someone grabbed my elbow and told me to stop and said, "You will never work in this town again." And I don't have that face. Could be a woman, could be a man, don't know. And they actually, just like a film noir movie, "You'll never work in this town again, kid. You've ruined it." And so I forgot about it, boom. And then later that evening, we're at the wake. All the friends, everybody met at somebody's house. We're having, having drinks and dinner. And we watched the local news. And what kicks off the broadcast? Me playing the harmonica. Boom, 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 boom. The newspaper blues. Not on one, it was on the ABC affiliate and the NBC affiliate. It was on two broadcasts of me playing. And literally the entire room. So it's like 20, 30 people, it's like everybody's sitting on the floor, on couches, standing up. Everybody's got a drink, the news on the little TV. And everyone literally turned like this. Like half the people in the room I didn't even know. And literally they turned like this and looked at me just with this mouth agape, like, what are you? Because a lot of them didn't even know that I went out to the back loading dock and played the harmonica.
And you're like 24-ish at this time, right?
This is 1991. This is December of 91. So I was 23.
Yeah, early 20. Yeah, like right out of college.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. 23. Yeah. And I was 23. And, I don't even know these people in this room. Some of these people there are people in the room probably with Pulitzers. There's old, the old salty journalists, and then there were some young journalists, and, there was a mix. There's a whole group of people. And they just looked at me like, "You're an idiot. What are you doing?" And then the next day in the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, the huge picture of me playing the harmonica. And then I had people across the country would call me up and they said, "Did I see you on the news playing the harmonica?" Because, different, if that's the NBC story, then if you're covering it in Atlanta, you might run that story, because that's a big deal. The Dallas paper closed, and then they would do the thing. Yeah. This is before social media. So yeah. Wow. I don't know if that's a prank. Would that be a prank? It's kind of a prank.
It's a great story. But you did get another job. So you get out of it.
I did.
You did get another, but it wasn't in a paper. So you kind of go into PR, which I mean is obviously journalism also, but talk about how that you go from two newspapers and now you're at Edelman, it looked like.
Well, my severance ran out, Jeff. And
how much severance did you get? Was it lucrative?
I think it was like, I want to say like $3,000.
Yeah.
I mean, 1991.
Yeah.
Single guy.
Yeah.
I have a car payment.
That was 6 months salary, right? $3,000.
Yeah, probably. I think it was around that. That's what I want to say. I can't say that for sure, but I think it was around that. I went skiing and I went to Vegas. So I don't know why that severance ran out. That's weird, Jeff. Yeah.
Ran out in one weekend.
Yeah, that was weird because I went to Vegas and I went skiing. My severance ran out, and remember the Yellow Pages? This is another thing that for the kids at home.
Yeah.
For the kids at home, there was a book and it was yellow and it had everybody's phone number and address in it, and it was dropped off on your porch every year. And so, so I opened up the Yellow Pages and I to PR, to public relations agencies, and I picked out the 4 biggest ads. This is an absolute true story. I picked out the 4 biggest ads and I sent my resume. And Edelman was one of the ads, and they called me and said, come in for an interview. And so I came in for an interview. I had never taken a PR class. I'd never written a press release. The only thing I knew about PR was I met PR people. I'm like, can't be that hard. That's basically, that was my thought process. Can't be that hard. Never took a class, never wrote a press release, never did anything in PR. Edelman called and they said, why don't you come in Monday and work for a week and we'll see how it goes. And then by the end of Monday, they hired me. I guess they needed somebody. I don't know.
Yeah, but you continued on your role of not working at a company long. So it looked like you're only there about a year, and then you pivoted to J. Walter Thompson.
Yeah, thank you for going through my resume, Jeff. Yeah, I can't help it that other companies keep recruiting me out of there. But I'm not, here, look, I was not destined to work for somebody else for a very long amount of time. So I got a job. Yeah, I got a job in Edelman. I liked the job. It was a good job. But then J. Walter Thompson said, hey, actually I was recruited for, there was a Boston PR agency, and then J. Walter Thompson at the same time were recruiting me and to come work for them. And so the Boston one would have been like a part-time thing, like half-time in Dallas, half-time in Boston, or I'd moved to Boston. I don't remember. And then J. Walter Thompson, and they were both offering, substantial raises, which that's how you get a raise. You get another job. I figured that out pretty early. Yeah. Didn't take me long to figure that out. And so, so I got J. Walter Thompson. So I took the J. Walter Thompson job and worked there for a little less than a year. Met my future wife there, and then went on my own and said, this isn't the right deal for me. And so I had an opportunity, had a couple potential opportunities to do some work. And I said, I'm going to leave and do my own thing, doing PR, marketing, advertising, just do my own thing. Right. And I had a startup, a technology startup, wanted me to do PR for them on a kind of a contract basis. So that was kind of my foundation. And so, and that, paid the bills, and I was fine. And then I found other work from that. And that's when the speaking stuff started, but it was just a little bit here and there. Didn't think it was going to be a business or my whole business, but it just started slowly taking over.
What was it like doing your first open mic night, during this time period? What was that? That had to be terrifying.
You know what? It was it was a club called Backdoor Comedy Club, and it was in a pizza restaurant that I guess the pizza place was, they had a stage and they did comedy on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. They did comedy at night. They let the club just take over, and there was like 15 comedians would go up, and everybody had when you first started, you had 3 minutes. And then as you did more, you got 5 minutes. And the first time, I don't think I was really that good. I don't remember me being, and it was a process, but it was a calling, and I was fairly natural at it. But when I was at my best, when I was just doing improv off the cuff, crowd work is what Don Rickles made famous. And I had 3 bits. I had 3 real bits. And then some of my other bits were I'll say I had 3 successful bits. And then I would try new bits out, and I'm like, eh. But when I was the best, when I was just messing with the audience, and then I would get other shows here and there, and you meet other comedians, and they're like, oh, we're doing a show in Lake Texoma, and you're on at a beach resort at a lake doing comedy on the sand in the middle of the day, or like, oh, they need 5 comedians we're going to be in a tent at the state fair. And so we're doing comedy, I remember doing stand-up in the parking lot right after the Dixie Chicks. You remember the original Dixie Chicks? Yeah. And they did a set, and then I went up and did stand-up, and we were in the parking lot of the football stadium. Just crazy. Wow. And you would just do, oh yeah, we're going to go do this club in Lubbock. Okay. All right. We're going down to Denton. We're doing 3 of us. They need 3 comedians, and you got $25. Yeah. And so and that's what I did. And then I auditioned for the improv group. They had their own theater, and they did 4 public shows a week, and then corporate stuff, or then corporate private shows. And so when I joined the the improv group, we're doing 2 shows on Friday, 2 on Saturday. And so I started still doing a little stand up, and then it just kind of evolved into, I was just really focused on the improv.
Yeah. What got you into the improv?
The first weekend that I moved to Dallas, some friends took me to a show, and it was literally like a movie. It was like the light shining on the, I mean, it was just like, this is what you should do. I mean, it was amazing. It was as close to a spiritual moment as I've ever had. I was an audience volunteer, and that first night, and then they had workshops, and I took a couple workshops, and it just was something that I absolutely loved. I just loved everything about improv. The teamwork aspect of it. You don't know what's going to happen next. Finding that one perfect moment, that everybody working together for this common experience of finding this perfect comedy moment. I loved everything about it. The audience was on the journey. They don't know what you're going to do, and they're on that journey with you. And sometimes it might go bad, and sometimes you pull it back, and you find that incredible moment. It's just everything I loved about it. And then I auditioned, and when I joined the troupe, it was just fantastic. It was really, immediately I found success with it.
I watched your speaker reel prior to our discussion today on this. I was just so laughing, hysterically at your speaker reels. Like because it's all about improv moments.
Right.
It's so funny that these
Thank
people
you.
from companies or associations come out of the audience, and some of them are spectacular.
Yeah. So I figured out using improv as my keynote. Now, I didn't know there were speakers, Jeff. I didn't know there were speaker bureaus. I didn't know companies had events and hired speakers. I had no clue. Texas Instruments was one of my PR clients. They said, we're having this executive retreat. Can you play some of those improv games? We know you do improv on the weekend. Play some of those games with us before dinner. And I went, okay. And I took another performer with me, and we didn't have a plan. We improv. We're like, oh, let's play this game with them, and let's play this game. There was no message. And so I loved it. The little light bulb started flickering on, and I was like, I could offer this to other clients. And at that time, I just thought small groups, we're going to really focus on creativity or innovation. And then just like anything, you do a great job, you take care of the customer, you're easy to work with, your name gets passed around. And somebody would call me and then said, hey, I heard you speak. Can you come, and we have this group of 200 people. Can you talk about teamwork? Yep. One of the big rules of improv is you say yes, and then you figure it out.
Right. Yeah.
Yes, and you figure it out. And so I would say yes, and that's how it started. And sometimes I'd be literally outside of the ballroom figuring out what I'm going to do minutes before I jumped on stage. And I would play improv games, and it evolved. Everything evolves. And I would say something that I liked, and I go, I'm going to say that. I should say that again. That I think that's a really good point. And I'm really just speaking from the heart, what improv taught me about teamwork and change and leadership and communication and innovation, because that's what it's meant to do to begin with. And so I would just continue to do these. And at this time, I'm getting like, if you're paying me a couple Chili's gift cards and maybe a hoodie, right? That's what I'm getting out of this. You give me a paperweight with a clock in it. Oh, and
everything was logoed though, with the company logo.
I'm still, hey, it's free, baby. Are you kidding me? And so, so I would get swag or $50 in gift cards, maybe every once in a while, a couple $100. And so, but I was learning. That was my apprenticeship. That was my training. And in 97, Allstate Insurance wanted me to speak at an employee event at one of their offices here. And they said I was going to be speaking in their auditorium. Well, Jeff, I call that, they might call it a lunchroom. They may call it an auditorium. I just jacked up the joke. They may call it an auditorium, but I called it a lunchroom. It's a lunchroom. And so that had a stage. And so I had a production company record it, and we edited together my first demo. That was 1997. And so that was my first demo on VHS, and I would send it out to everybody. And I started getting better paying jobs, not big, not huge, but just slowly building. And then by 99-ish, it had taken over my entire business. I'm a speaker now. And speaker bureaus were representing me and putting me out there for their clients. And now, 2,500 or so events later, I'm speaking to you on your podcast.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Exec HQ, a C-suite fractional firm providing elite executives for your business. If you're having challenges taking your business to the next level, if you want to augment your leadership team, or prepare your company for increased growth, profitability, and an eventual successful exit, we have seasoned executives from every C-suite position ensuring a perfect fit for your needs and the dynamics of your industry. You will work with senior leaders who like to roll up their sleeves while checking their egos at the door. They can help your business in specific services such as strategic planning, executive leadership coaching, financial management, corporate governance, marketing, sales management, and many other advisory solutions vital to your business success. That's exechq.com. To learn more, go to exechq.com or email Jeff Palacio at jeff.palacio@exechq.com.
So at about 1999, Joel Zeff Creative stopped functioning as a PR marketing consulting agency for basically tech companies and some others.
Right.
And you become full-time Joel Zeff Creative, keynote speaker. Okay. So when you just go back to right after J. Walter Thompson, just what was you're a W-2 employee now, but now you're the boss, the owner, the president, CEO of Joel Zeff Creative. What was your biggest
That sounds
aha
official.
moment? Like, holy shit, I didn't know this was going to happen.
I never really to be honest with you, I never had a plan. My plan was I didn't want to work at the ad agency. That was I don't want to work here. That was my only goal. I don't want to work here. I don't like it here. I don't want to work here. That was my only goal. And so, okay, now I'm doing, contract for various, writing. Sometimes clients would hire me to do media relations, trade show, help with their trade shows. And it just, I would pick up these clients and do this work. And then at the same time, I'm speaking. I'm having clients ask me to do, let's do, we have a 20-person, we'd like you to do a workshop. There's a company called JPI, and they're property management. And some of the execs saw me at the comedy at the improv group, and I started doing work for them, doing little 20-person, 25-person. And there were other companies too that were jumping early. And I was doing a lot of pro bono too, like United Way, Big Brothers Big Sisters, Red Cross, Heart Association. Actually, United Way, I was doing a lot. And from there, I would get other business for speaking. Different companies would see me at the United Way event. It just kind of grew and started, and then putting myself out there. And I was doing videos for different clients, and it's the same skill set. I was just finding different ways to use that skill set. The communication, whether it's verbal, written, nonverbal, videos. I was just finding different ways to communicate, and clients needed that help. And so the speaking was always there when I went on my own. One here, one there, small job, medium-sized job. And then when I put the video together and started putting putting materials together, I did had a little trifold brochure. And then I don't remember when my first website was. I'm guessing late 90s, my first website. And so, you just start putting yourself out there. And then the speaker bureaus, they're representing me, and you just kind of growing the business. But to be honest with you, I get this question all the time from people who are wanting to become speakers. How did you get started? How do you do it? And I say, well, first of all, nobody has the same path to become a speaker. Everybody has a different path. My path, you're not going to be able to duplicate my path. When I first started, there are a lot of speakers that have great message, lots of speakers with great message. You say, well, I want a great message, but I want it to be funny. Okay, well, there's plenty with a great message and are funny. Okay, but there's a lot fewer of those.
Right.
And you say, well, I want a great message. I want it to be funny. I want it to be interactive with the audience.
Yeah.
Now you're talking about, at that time, less than 5 people.
Yeah, you own that space because you're so focused, narrow focus. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and I've interviewed a lot of keynote speakers on my podcast, and obviously I look at their speaker reels. But I mean, like I said, your speaker reel, it was so good, so good.
I am Venmoing you now, Jeff.
Joel has been the only guest to give me money to appear on the corporate couch. I'm only joking there. Yeah, no, it's so obviously your writing was in your blood, journalism major, work for newspapers. But when was the idea about the book? Like what was the impetus behind that? Because it was about 7 years in.
Yeah.
To into your kind of speaking career that the book got published in 2007.
Right. Wow, Jeff, you did your research. I'm very proud of you.
Usually,
I'm
a professional talent.
It's frankly,
I have a team of 16 researchers that help me.
And then, Joel, when your parents got divorced, what was that like?
Joel wasn't potty trained till 4 years old.
I don't think that's true, but I can't say it's not true because I don't know. But I don't think it's true. I'm going to call my mom right now. Mom. So Wiley is my publisher. Wiley's a huge business book publisher, one of the largest. And I got a phone call out of the blue, which if you want to write a book, I highly recommend having a publisher call you out of the blue and say, we'd like to publish your book. It makes things so much easier. So that's what happened. Wiley called and said, hey, I was researching somebody else. So I don't know what the story was. And I said, I came across your website and I watched some video and I liked it. And I noticed that you don't have a book. Why do you not have a book? And this was my answer. This is absolutely true. I said, well, I was waiting for you to call me. I swear to God, that's exactly what I said. And I'm sure there was a pause. I don't remember. And they still wanted to work with me. And so Wiley published the book in 2007. And then it was great. It's basically all of my messages, and not just my messages, but some of the stories. And then when you watch thousands of audience volunteers from all different industries come on stage with me and play an improv game, you're going to learn about people, and you're going to learn about the choices they make in these environments, which are just little microcosms of teamwork and communication and leadership and innovation and change. And you're going to learn why they make these choices and what choices they make when they're successful and what choices they make when they're not as successful. And that's what improv teaches. And so I am filtering what improv taught me, but also what I've learned by watching these thousands of audience members from different industries play these games. And so each chapter kind of focuses on one message, either change or communication or teamwork, or there's multiple chapters. And then, so recently, in January, Wiley said, hey, would you like to do a second edition?
And that's January 2024, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah. Because the funny story there is I really believe in the universe kind of pointing my way in a lot of circumstances. And so I had spoken at an event for Cinemark, the movie theater, which is based here in Dallas. And the client wanted to buy 150 books. And during the pandemic, some of the books were, Wiley took some of the books off the shelf and they weren't printing them the way they were prior. And I said, well, I know some clients are having some problems getting copies of the book. And they're like, well, we want 150 copies. Can you figure that out? And I'm like, yeah. And I wrote it down on my to-do list, and then I didn't do anything. And then the client called and said, because she's somebody that gets things done. And she's like, where are we on those books? I said, I sent an email. I hadn't sent an email, but I did after the phone call. And so I found the right person at Wiley. I said, here's the deal. And they said, absolutely, we'll print the books. And do you need some more for your events coming up? And I'm like, yeah, that'd be great. And so that all happened because the client, pushed that. And then from that phone call, Wiley says, would you be interested in doing a second edition? I'm like, yeah, because I was pitching in the years prior. I think I pitched a couple second books, and it just kind of went nowhere. And then, so it's all about the right time and the right opportunity for everything. And this was the right time and the right opportunity. And this was when it was meant to happen.
Yeah. What was your writing process like the first time or the second?
So, I'm trained as a journalist. So that means I've been instilled with deadlines. So if I'm not on a deadline, I have a hard time I'm just going to write. I'm from, there's an editor smoking a cigarette, going, Joel, where's that? I need 30 inches on that murder. Give me that story. And they're yelling at me. And yes, they were smoking in the newsroom back when I was a newspaper reporter.
Yes, I remember smoking in the office.
Yeah. Get that story. People are yelling at you constantly. And so that's how, that you do that even for.
So was it one chapter, or like, I'm going to write one chapter that my deadline is 5 p.m. today? Okay.
Yeah. It was one chapter at a time. And the editor would just make up. I don't think the world was waiting for my book. I don't think the world cares when my book comes out, Jeff. And so they're just making up deadlines.
Yeah.
And so, so they would just, the editor in the first book, they should just make up deadlines, and I would probably miss them. And then for this book, same thing. We say it's a second edition, but it's really a new book because it's 5 new chapters. And then every chapter's been revised and rewritten and added to. Once I got into each chapter, I thought, I'll just change a couple jokes. No, I'm going to add another story. I'm going to add some more details. I'm going to add more about the message, whether it's about change or teamwork. And so once I got into it, I really got into it. And so then it's 5 brand new chapters.
Yeah.
So it's really a new book cover. We even changed the title, the subhead title. And so it was just working on each chapter as its own entity, like it was an article. And then, I would focus on that and then send it to the content editor. And then she would say, well, you might want to add a little more here, or I didn't, can you explain this? This didn't, or I really like this. And so that's the process. And then once it goes through that, then the copy editor gets a hold of it, and then they copy edit and they send it back. And then I go through each in the copy editing process, and then they send you the proof, and then you go through the proof. And now you're just looking for any glaring, maybe a space issue or something like that.
Yeah, interesting. Now, obviously, you were successful before the book, but did you find that legit's not the right word, but did you find
credibility?
Having a book? Yeah, did it make you more successful, or more people were drawn to you? What was the impact of the book?
You can't say, this client hired me because I have a book, or this client didn't hire me because I didn't have a book, but it's part of the branding. It's part of the credibility.
Sure.
It's part of the package. And I think clients do respond to that. Look, there's thousands of speakers. And so there's a million reasons why somebody is not going to hire you, because there's incredible competition. I don't care what your budget is. There's 100 people with the same fee. And then, like I had a client last week, and he said, I watched over 300 videos. And I'm like, you're kidding me. He's like, no. I go, you're being serious? He goes, I'm absolutely being serious. 300 different speaker videos before they chose me.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Well, there's a testimonial.
Yeah. And I'm like, are you, he's like, absolutely. I'm serious.
Wow.
And he goes, because he made a joke, he goes, it would have been really great if your last name didn't start with a Z, because apparently he was going alphabetical.
Oh my God.
Note
to self, change my last name.
Got to put an A in front of that.
Yeah, 2 A's.
Really funny.
2 A's.
I thought it was really funny. But there's a lot of competition, or the CEO, wants a speaker that's an Olympian. Okay, well, I can't. I'm not an Olympian. You're not going to, so there's a lot of reasons, or, sometimes they want to do a theme, and the theme is, reach the summit. Well, of course you're going to have a mountain climber. You got to have the guy that climbed Everest. And so
I had one of those when I was at one of my companies. We had
ah,
we had somebody like that.
dude, I haven't seen a mountain climber speaker in a while, but there was a time I felt like
Yeah, it was a
I felt like everyone who's gone up Everest is now keynote speaking.
yeah.
Everyone.
Yeah, in 2010, 11, I was at Beringer Ingelheim. Yeah, we had a mountain climber. I can't remember
Yeah.
what the speech or the name of the person,
Yeah.
but no
Yeah.
one forgets your name. I bet after you
Uh,
speak.
yeah, although I do have a lot of people call me Jeff, and I accept. Actually, I'll tell you a funny story about introductions and names. I was doing a presentation, group 500 people, and the guy gets up to do my introduction, is an older gentleman, and he said he'd been to this conference for like 35 years, so very nice. He starts reading my introduction. And he's not reading my introductions. He's reading the introduction of the speaker from yesterday. And that person was named Scotty, and he was a magician. So he's reading Scotty the magician's introduction for me. And I'm standing there on the side, and I'm trying to get the executive director's attention, and I'm pointing to the stage. And the executive director is like, "What? He's doing great," because he's not listening. And his name was Bob that was doing the introduction. Bob was great energy, reading it. He's doing a fantastic job with Scotty the Magician's introduction. Luckily, Scotty the Magician's introduction was long. And so I noticed my mic was on. And so I said, "Bob," I'm on the side of the ballroom. I go, "Bob." And Bob just kind of freaked out, because he's not expecting somebody to talk to him, over the speakers. "Bob." And he kind of freaks out. And I go, "Bob, hey, you're doing a great job. My name's Joel. I'm the speaker today. You're reading the introduction for Scotty, the magician who spoke yesterday. Any chance you could read my introduction?" The crowd goes nuts, right?
They probably thought
Like,
it was scripted.
this was so great. I wish this happened to me at every event, because it was the best icebreaker, best way to connect with the audience. And Bob, he's looking at the paper. He doesn't know what to do. And then the executive director runs up just bounds on stage, there's these papers on the lectern, and papers are flying, and he finds my introduction and gives it to Bob. And so Bob starts reading my introduction. What I did was I actually missed a big opportunity. I should have just let Bob finish my introduction as Scotty the Magician, go up there and just do 5 minutes of the worst magic ever. you know, I mean, just have the drink a half glass of water. Ta-da. I mean, until the audience just turns on me. But I didn't. But I did talk about Bob and how he stayed in the game, and I made a message out of it. And Bob and I took a photo, and it was actually one of my all-time favorite moments in 2,500 events is Bob doing the introduction of Scotty the Magician.
Over 2,500 events, any like crazy
Oh
crap
my
that
gosh.
happened, like just
Yes.
inappropriate, or just, maybe some of those stories.
I could just, you tell me how many stories you want to hear. So I was doing an event. Remember when, the show Dallas, and they redid Dallas like in the early 2000s. Remember,
Right.
they or mid 2000s, whatever. They brought Dallas back, and they brought Larry Hagman back as JR, the main character, or the big, huge star. And so I was speaking at this hotel in Dallas, and Larry was staying in the presidential suite. That's when he was filming the show. He was staying up there, and somebody was friends with Larry, and they said, "Hey, we asked Larry if he could come and say hi to the audience, because that would be kind of cool thing. You're in Dallas. Larry Hagman from Dallas, JR, come down, say hi. That's kind of a cool little thing." I go, "Oh, that's great." He goes, "The only time he can do it is right during the middle of your keynote. Would you mind if you stopped your keynote and Larry Hagman said hi to the audience?" And I'm like, "No, are you kidding me? That sounds great." And so Larry Hagman, and he was sick at that time, unfortunately, and he passed away not too long after that. And so, he was but he's a big man. He had a big cowboy hat, big belt buckle. He's still, even though he was sick, he was still a big figure. And he came in, and side note, I hadn't really connected to this audience yet. They weren't really, it was a very low energy audience for me. And so Larry Hagman comes on stage, and it was like the audience went nuts. I can't prove this, but I think people were throwing articles of clothing at him. I think that's how big it was. And they were like, "Wah!" And he's like, "Oh my, I'm Larry Hagman. Welcome to Dallas." And so he, "Oh, we're real happy that you're here, and hope you're all having a really great time." And so, yeah. And so then he left. The crowd was just enthralled by him. And then I start back up my keynote, and they're like, "You're not Larry Hagman."
Oh,
I just the whole audience, I had the feeling of, can we bring Larry Hagman back?
oh
And
God.
so, yeah, I don't remember how. And that's so that was an interesting one. I remember doing an evening event, and this for a public company, and the client said, the CEO gets up and he says, "We were waiting for a phone call." And it was a public company, but they had one primary client, and they were in contract negotiations. It was like some kind of distribution company. And CEO goes, "We just got the phone call. We are ending negotiations. They are not moving forward with the contract.
Oh,
And now let's have our keynote speaker, Joel Zeff, to make us laugh and have fun." And so the
man.
whole audience is freaking out because they have one primary client, and this client is not moving forward. So basically what that means is they're all in a serious trouble.
Did you have your
So
harmonica?
No, I didn't. But and let's have some fun with Joel. And then Joel brings energy and laughter to every audience. And that come up. Within 2 weeks, that company was bought off, sold off. Everyone lost their jobs. Well, or the people that were, it was gone. It was that entity it did not exist. I do remember a couple times being introduced after they do a montage video of the CEO that just died, and then let's bring up Joel for some fun. Not only did we do I followed the montage video of the CEO that died. I also followed let's have a moment of prayer for our CEO who's in a coma. I swear. And let's bring up Joel.
Timing's everything.
Yeah, I'm not kidding you.
Oh,
I'm not. That is absolutely
so good.
God. Yeah.
Joel, I love to help two groups of people, but before I ask you the question, the first group is a recent college graduate, how to navigate their job search. But I want to get back to your University of Kansas days at the iconic Allen Fieldhouse.
Rock chalk.
Rock chalk. But you started a tradition there, so I'd be remiss if I didn't have you tell that story.
Jeff, I love all the details, Jeff. So, yep, I was a freshman in 1986. I look good, don't I? We both look good, Jeff. We both look good.
Yeah,
we both look really good. And Allen Fieldhouse, let me just say, I've traveled all around. Allen Fieldhouse is still, if I said, what's your favorite place on earth? Allen Fieldhouse is probably, in the top three.
The mecca of college basketball.
I mean, it's just, to me, my happy place. It is just my absolute happiest. There's not a time that I don't watch a game that there's a tear, whether it's during the Rock Chalk chant or the alma mater or they show the video. It's a very emotional connection for me. In 1986, at my friend Andre's, I'm in his dorm room and I'm looking through his yearbook. He played football at a high school in the Kansas City area. And I'm looking at his yearbook and there's a picture of people holding a newspaper up at a game. And I'm like, what are you doing? What is that? I'm like, well, at the basketball games, we hold the newspaper up, like we're reading the newspaper while they announce the opposing team. And then when it's time to announce our team, we rip it up and we throw it up. We're excited for our team. I said, we need to do that at KU. We need to do that at Allen Fieldhouse. And so, you just kind of go with you walk around in like packs of guys, back then. And so, we had a lot of friends. We all went together to the game. We grabbed a stack of the University Daily Kansan, which I ended up writing for. Very proud of that. And we passed out the paper, said what we're going to do. We're going to hold the newspaper up when they announce the opposing team, and then we're going to rip it up, throw it up. And so it just started with our kind of group. And then it just kind of gradually, in our section behind the basket, the student section behind the basket, it just kind of grew. And we would pass papers out to all the people around us. And sometimes, if nobody had a paper, you would, just tear it in half and here you would share your newspaper so everybody could have some paper. And so that's started in 1986. And me, I brought that to KU, and they continue to this day. Is that 38 years? 14? Yeah, 38 years later,
Yeah.
they continue. And the Kansan, who doesn't print anymore, will print a special sheet just for the games and sell advertising. And they'll have some kind of graphic on there that's for that particular game. And so the students can hold up the paper and continue to do that. And it's amazing that, one, it's continued. Two, it's gotten way bigger than when we did it. I mean, huge. I mean, the whole section, and people are ripping it up. I bought and there's photos, all the photos. I mean, my son got accepted to the University of Kansas. And if we can say a little prayer that he will be a Jayhawk, let's say a little prayer and hope that he will be a Jayhawk and not choose some of the other schools that also accepted him. And, the little brochure that they sent him, you're a Jayhawk. And it was people with paper,
Nice.
there was a photo of people. And I'm like, I brought that. And that's a true story. And actually, they wrote a little article in this year they did a little magazine for new students, for all the new students to learn about the traditions. And they wrote about that tradition.
Yeah, nice.
So yeah, I didn't invent it. I did not invent holding the news. I just brought it
That's
to
all right.
KU in 1986. True story. Swear to God.
Love it. Love it.
Yep.
So somebody graduating last May or this coming December from any university, what advice would you have for them as they begin their career journey?
Actually, that's a great question, because my daughter was home this past weekend with a friend of hers. They're both journalism majors, and they're both graduating in May. And I was talking to both of them, and I said, look, and one of them was meeting with a company that she had done an internship with, some people in Dallas. And I asked her how it went. And she said, it was so great. And they were so open and engaging and wanted to help me and give me a few, tips and names. And I said, that's something you really need to understand. People want to help you. Don't be afraid to ask whether you know that person or don't know that person. If that's a company that you're interested in, it's so easy on LinkedIn to connect with somebody and say, hey, I'm interested in this engineering company, or I'm interested in this IT. I would love to come down and have coffee and tell me a little bit about the company. And I promise you, 9 out of 10 times, they're going to say, come on down. People want to help. They see themselves in you as a young person graduating college. They see that, they remember where they were when they were graduating college, and they want to give back, and they want to feel that they're helping, and they want to give some of their wisdom to you. And everybody wants to talk about themselves. And so when you're a new graduate, for you to reach out to someone and say, tell me what you do at blank company, I want to learn more, they are going to want to, because they get to talk about their favorite subject, which is them. And then you make a connection. And I tell my daughter too, connect with people on LinkedIn right now. Connect, whether you know them. LinkedIn is not Facebook and Instagram where you're just connecting with your friends. It's not. LinkedIn is about creating a business network to move your career forward, to move, what you want to do, to find a job. LinkedIn is many different things, but start connecting with people and reaching out, send them a note. If you're interested in that company or that business, people will want to help you. And I've connected my daughter with a couple other journalists, friends of mine that have graduated, or that I graduated with, and I said, hey, I want to introduce you to my daughter. She's a journalism major. She's thinking about, what she wants to do with her journalism degree. I want to connect you. And what I really love to do is connecting her with successful women, that, you're in your same spot. I want to connect. I know all these incredible women that are journalists were in your spot, and they have a different perspective than I do. And I want you to meet these incredible people and learn from them. And these are incredible role models in your field that I know. And so, that have been incredibly successful, and they can help you, and they want to help you. And so that's what I would say to any college student. Connect with people, start your networking. Don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to ask for something. and you'll be surprised what you're going to get back in return.
Yeah. No, I love that advice. That's I share that with any college graduate that asks me about it. So yeah, I love that. The second group is, well, anybody can be a leader at a company. Once you take that, if you want to be responsible for a team of people and you get that promotion to a manager of a team, what advice would you have for them as they begin that leadership journey?
One of my favorite messages that I talk about in my keynote about teamwork and leadership, and I always say I keep things really simple. And improv works because everyone's asking a question. How do I help the people around me be successful? That's an easy question. For a leader, that's a really easy question. How do I help the people around me be successful? Now, you should know the answer, what people need to be successful, what your team needs, what your customers need, what your partners and your vendors need. And then the hard part is to act on it, to actually do it and not expect anything back in return, but just to do it because you want to help them be successful. And that to me is, in the simplest forms, what I believe as far as great teamwork and great leadership. And that is should be your driving, should be that light, that driving light, that how do I help the people around me be successful? Ask the question and answer it. And I think you will be a great leader, because there's plenty of leaders that say, what can all of you do for me? How can all of you help me be successful or rich? Or, that's not leadership. That's just taking advantage of you.
Right.
They don't care about you. They only care about themselves. And so a great leader cares about you and your success, because if you are successful, that leader's going to be successful. It's going to come back to them. You finding success is going to help me as a leader reach my goals, but I have to set that foundation for you. In improv, there's no script, there's no rehearsal, there's no plan. And people always ask, how does it work? You guys create things, you plan things, you have it in your mind. Like, no, there's no script, there's no rehearsal, there's no plan. I don't know what's going to happen. But what I do know is I want to make my team, the people I'm on stage with, I want to make sure they're successful. So what do I need to do? Do I need to set them up? What do I need to do to help them find their goals and be successful comedically in that game? And improv is an art form. It's forcing you to make those choices, whether you know it or not. So when I bring audience volunteers up that have no improv training, it's an art form. It's forcing them to make that choice to help their teammates be successful just by what that game is and what their role and responsibility is in that game. It forces you to make that choice. And that's really one of the cool things about improv. And so it's asking that question. Then when you study it and you spend more time and you're being more experienced and you become an expert at it, you realize what you're doing and you're thinking about it more. How do I help everyone on stage find success? And that's what great teamwork and leadership, that's what improv teaches us.
Joel, yeah, thank you for that answer. I love that. You've been so good. I don't think I've laughed as much in any interview I've had, over 100 interviews. So thank you so much for being on the Corporate Couch this morning.
Jeff, I had incredible, you did your research.
Yeah.
And
we didn't even get to ta-da.
Ta-da! You want ta-da? Ta-da is everything I do in my keynotes, and it's the energy, and it's about watching your kids, when they're little, and everything they do, we celebrate. When they're 3, 4, everything's a celebration, everything. And we give them confidence. Ta-da, ta-da, you did it. You ate your cheese sandwich, or ta-da, you threw a ball, or ta-da, you went to the bathroom by yourself for the first time. Everything's a celebration. And that celebration builds their confidence. They get a big smile on their face. They do more of what we're celebrating. And as we get older, we have these moments every single day, but we don't celebrate them. We just think it's part of our day. Part of our day is to, help do our work and help our customer and whatever, manufacture, sell, distribute, manage, whatever we do. But those are celebrations. And if we don't celebrate, we don't have the fuel, right? That fuel that fuels our passion and our love of what we do, and to be great at it. And so we have to celebrate. We have to celebrate those ta-da moments. And that's one of the things that I talk about in my keynote.
Wow.
And in the book, and in the new book, Make the Right Choice, available November 13th on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or wherever you buy books.
And we'll put Joel's website at joelzeff.com. But Joel, thanks again for being on the Corporate Couch. You were great. Thank you.
Jeff, thank you, my friend.
Joe, you know I love all the guests, but and you can't have a favorite guest, but I can say this: Joel had me, and I was laughing so hard.
Was that
during our
amazing
interview.
or what?
Oh my God! And his speaker reel, the sizzle reel, as they call it in the biz, it's so good. It's 8.5 minutes. I was crying laughing. I listened to it before we got on the call, and it's so good. And what I love about his speaking, and by the way, we've had a lot of people that do keynotes and speaking engagements, but I'm pretty sure none of them have had over 2,500 speaking engagements in their career. Joel started, full time in '99, doing that. So that's
just what he does, and he does it so well.
Yeah, and early on, I think he was in his early, maybe 29, 30 years old. I don't know exact age at that time, but maybe early 30s. But like, it's incredible. And what I love about it, if you watch the speaker reel, and you and I've been in enough companies, but doing the improv, and he was called to God to do the improv. He was doing stand up, and then got involved in this improv group in Dallas. But I mean, he, all the messages in his speech where he brings up audience members that are not comedians, and it's hysterical what they put together with this improv, spin he has on it, and he's so good at it, and he's funny.
Making it up as you go along.
Great work. Create a positive environment, improve your collaboration and teamwork, and focus on your partner's success. 3 keys to leading change, and 3 keys to being successful during change, and promoting ownership and accountability, and encouraging innovation and improving communications. All those things he does, and he brings the people that he's speaking to, the companies, the organizations, and they get to experience it. And I'm sure if you're part of that audience, whether you were on stage or not, you're like, these are some great points. Look at this. And it's funny, and people remember funny things. So, I mean, it's got to have so much impact on things. And then it just seems like his whole career was guided by God or the universe. I mean, he was a journalism major at University of Kansas, which, started the whole newspaper, the student section during the
reading the newspaper.
Games. Yeah, he started that in, I forget, a 90s.
And they're still doing it, even though they don't publish the newspaper anymore.
Right. They don't. They publish it for the game.
They publish it just for that.
I go, oh, you wrote a book because you were a journalism major, right? Because you probably had it in you. He goes, no. Wiley called me up. I'm like, Wiley? That's like Jimmy Fallon calling me up to be on the Tonight Show. I mean, maybe not that bad, but or that good, I guess. I don't know. I just love them. I just think he's a great. I would just love to hear him live. Actually, it'd be phenomenal. What you get out of the conversation with Joel?
This by far was the funniest and most entertaining guest that we've had on, maybe ever. And I think I can say that without fear of retribution, because he was just there were so many. I wrote and wrote and wrote notes while I was listening to him, trying to think about all the things that I wanted to remember. You talked about the book that he wrote and how he got that book, because Wiley called him up and said, "Hey, you ought to write a book." And what was his response? He said, "Well, I was just waiting for you to call me."
Yeah, why haven't you wrote a book? And he said, "Yeah, I was waiting for you to call me." Like,
and then, and everybody has a book inside them, right? So he had essentially already written it. He just hadn't written it down. Here's something that I thought was interesting, because it reminds me so much of me, and that is that he said when he was writing, you asked him something about what was his process in writing. He said he had to have a deadline. He had to have somebody telling him something, and so he had to have some sort of schedule or deadline like that. And that came from his journalism newspaper days, because he'd have a editor with a cigarette hanging out there and saying, I need 30 inches of material on that murder, and I need it by, deadline time.
When you could smoke at the office.
That's back when you could smoke at the office, and they did.
Oh yeah.
So so he had to have at least self-imposed deadlines about, I don't know, a chapter a night or 2 hours a night or something like that. And in the times that I've written, well, me in us working on this podcast, I'm exactly like that. I have to have a deadline, or I'm kind of like, how a vacuum will expand to fill the space that it's given. And that's how I am with most of my work that I do. If you give me 3 hours to do a project, I will take 3 hours and do that project. If you give me 30 minutes to do it, I'll take 30 minutes and get it done. And it'll be essentially the same result. So it just reminded me so much of me and how I write. But I tell you, I have just lines and lines of notes that I could go on and on and on writing. He talked about how it seemed like the universe was just kept handing him things, right? That he didn't always have a plan for everything, but things just sort of happened to him, and it worked out well. And obviously, it's working out very well for him. He's very successful in what he's doing. And but then he comes on the lowly little corporate couch and gives us just as much energy as he would if he was standing in front of 10,000 people giving a keynote speech.
And I loved it. Ta-da!
Ta-da! Ta-da! It was amazing.
Yeah, it was really fun. Really fun. Joe, what great advice would you like to give our listeners today?
We are going to go to that great philosopher named Anonymous today. And Anonymous one time said this: eggs are fantastic for a fitness diet. If you don't like the taste, just add cocoa, flour, sugar, butter, baking powder, and cook at 350 for 30 minutes.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Corporate Couch. If you enjoy the podcast, I would love for you to take 2 minutes out of your day to rate us 5 stars and write a review. Please join me next week to learn from another great leader sharing their professional journey and insights.